And then when I got kicked off the Olympic team, I went from this cocky person, arrogant, to reading comments online and people were saying, I bet he's humble now. And it stuck with me. Now, I say this with respect to everyone's religious beliefs and backgrounds, but the actual definition of humble is lowly. And I realized during my suspension, I was humbled. This is where you accomplish things. So if the best person in the room humbled themselves down to where everyone else is. So I decided I was going to throw humility out the window. I was going to be my biggest fan. And I went out and I legally changed my last name to Awesome because I genuinely believe I am. So I realized when I change my last name to Awesome, it's going to rub some people the wrong way. But I can't stop believing in myself because other people don't believe in themselves.
All right, Cam F. Awesome. That is his name. I'm really excited to talk to him. I was reading the bio today. We're getting into personal development, got a little bit of long shot story. What I liked most in the pregame, he's asking me questions. He's like, well, what about this, Mike? What about that? And, I don't have I got the Bullets Work banner up behind me today, but I got the long shot leaders banner and I got a picture of Einstein and a bunch of other good people up there. And Einstein says he attributes his success towards curiosity. Cam is a curious guy, and I love that. So let's get down to the origin of things. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what did your mom and dad do for a living? Because you got a nice story here, so I just kind of want to get a feel for it, and we want to discuss it.
All right. So I'm born and raised Long Island, New York. My mom's from England, and my dad's from Trinidad. They met in New York. They had the greatest thing they could have after they had my sister. My mom, she bounced back and forth between jobs. She didn't really work much. And my dad owned a construction company. So he drove a cement truck Monday through Friday, and he had a side business on the weekends where he would fix people's driveways and sidewalks. He'd redo those. I lived with my grandma growing up until like the age of 12. But my dad would pick me up on the weekends on the way to the job site. So I would have to be on the curb at 5:15 in the morning. And I was always excited to see my dad because I don't care what kind of dad you are. When you're a kid, you're just excited to hang out with your dad. And if I was on that curb at 5:17, he would leave me and I wouldn't get to see him that week. He only had to leave me once. And I realized that would never happen again. So he'd pick me up. I would get in his pickup truck with him. But right before we got to Home Depot to pick up laborers for the day, I would hop in the back of the pickup truck because I didn't want the workers to think that I was the boss's son. Like I wanted them to respect me. And so the laborers would get paid $100 a day. Let's say he was going to do your driveway and your sidewalk. Saturday morning, we show up at your house about 6 a.m. 3 laborers, they get paid $100 each. So these men show up at Home Depot at about 3 o'clock in the morning. They just stand and hope for work. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know how long they're going to be working. They don't know the conditions they'll be working in. There's no Band-Aids. There's no first aid kits. These are men. I know there's a big talk about what a man is. Most men don't fall in the category of what they are. Like men, like no gloves. They're just calluses. And I try to work with them and work on their level. So they would break up concrete and throw it in a dumpster, a 20-foot dumpster. And so let's say it's $500 for the dumpster, $300 for labor. All right, that was the first day. Second day, my dad shows up, 1 laborer for $100 and 2 floaters. Floaters are the guys, they're usually Portuguese. They make the concrete smooth. They make the lines on the concrete. They're talented. They make $450 a day. So the first day, $800 in labor and material. The second day, 2 guys for $450 each and 1 laborer for $100 to go get the bricks and everything. So do the hard labor. The guys who made $450 didn't work that hard. They just knew how to use tools. So from an early age, I learned there's a value in learning a skill. A skill can allow you to make 4 times more than the other guy and do significantly less work. And then they would pour the concrete. And then my job was at the end of the day, I would just sit at the job site and literally watch concrete dry. Made sure no dogs came and walked over it, made sure kids didn't write their names in it. I just had to sit there until it dried. So let's say my dad charged you $5,000 for the job. So first day, 800 labor, second day, 1,000 in labor. He drove the cement truck Monday through Friday, so he got it at a discount. So let's say it's extra 1,500. So $2,500 in labor and material. He charged you $5,000. My dad made $2,500 in a weekend, and he was never at the job site. He would show up and drop off beer and pizza, and he always wore white sneakers because he didn't want anyone to ask him to help. So here's what I learned. You can be the $100 laborer with no skills. You can learn a skill and earn $450, or you can organize skillful people and make significantly more. So I took the white shoe philosophy. Since I learned this, I was about 12 years old. I decided I didn't need school. So I never really cared for school, didn't care for college. My thought process was I can go to college, get a degree. Let's say you spend $100,000 getting a degree for marketing. Right now you have a marketing degree. I would just start a marketing company, get a business loan, and hire someone with a degree. And if the business doesn't work out, I can file for bankruptcy. The guy who has that degree has to pay that debt for the rest of his life. So I looked at things in an efficient way my entire life. But I didn't grow up with my parents. I grew up with my grandma. But when she moved back to Jamaica, she was Jamaican. My parents I had to live with both my parents. They moved in for the first time like in my life. And I had to live with both my parents. They had separate rooms, but they lived together to afford us. It was me and my three siblings, and me and my two sisters. There's three of us. And I didn't grow up around men other than the construction. I never knew how to interact, and I was an easy target for bullying. Mm-hmm. And I was a grandma's boy. I was soft. I'm not a tough guy. And there's a bully who lived down the block from me. He would beat my ass every time he saw me. And at one point in fourth grade, he beat me up, slammed my head into a brick wall, and sent me to the hospital with a concussion. Since then, I thought I was afraid of bullying, but what it was anxiety, but I didn't know there was a word for that. I was just terrified all the time. And when I moved in with my parents, anyone could be a parent, but they would say things like, because, my thought process is if there's a bully because after he put my head through the brick wall, they would allow me to leave school 15 minutes early so I can get home before my bully got to me. That's how bad it was. Now, my thought process is if someone's bullying my son, I'm going to show up to their parents' house. I'm going to burn their fucking house down. Or, we can have a conversation or mediation, but do something. My parents did nothing. If anything, they mocked me. They'd be like, you better wash the dishes before we call that boy over here, come beat your ass again. And that's when I kind of realized that, no one's going to save me. And when I was 16, I was tired of being afraid because I would volunteer in the nurse's office in school because I was afraid. I didn't know what anxiety was, but I got overwhelmed in big crowds. So I filed files in the nurse's office during my lunch period in school. And I was fed up. I wanted to, girls are important when you're 16. So I decided to join the boxing gym because I figured if I was a big buff boxer, I'd deal with bullies and I'd get a date to prom. And neither of those things happened. But just the way we started this interview and I asked you questions, when I got into boxing, I asked questions about the scoring system. Mm-hmm. And I look at everything very efficiently. I'm like, okay, so I would interview judges and say, before I start training, what are you looking for in a fight? And they're looking for clean scoring blows when someone's head snaps back. So I said, well, forget throwing hard power punches. I'm throwing snappy punches and uppercuts because it snaps your head back. It's the only thing I worked on. So I'm big on efficiency. So when I joined the boxing gym, I just did it for fitness. I just wanted to look like a fighter. I didn't want to actually fight. So coaches didn't pay me any attention. So I just looked at what other boxers did and I thought, okay, does this make sense or not? So I would see boxers hit the bag, but they would hit where like a guy's belly button would be. And I was like, they're doing that because it's easier and they're developing bad habits. So when I would hit the heavy bag, I would have a sweat going. I would touch my forehead on the bag. And that was my punch line. If I was too tired to punch if I was too tired and I started punching lower, I'd stop hitting the bag. That's developing bad habits. The speed bag. I couldn't figure out what that was for. So I asked around in the gym and they said, it's for hand-eye coordination. And I said, I bet you can't hit it with your eyes closed. Yeah, I can. And they close their eyes. I was like, well, if you can hit it with your eyes closed, is it hand-eye coordination? At best, it's hand-air coordination. That's a waste of time. And it's loud and annoying. I want to listen to music in the gym and you can't hear over the loud speed bag. So my thought process was if I'm going to take this boxing thing seriously, the average boxer works out 250 days a year. The average boxer hits the speed bag for 4 rounds a year. That's so, and each round is basically 4 minutes long. So it's basically 1,000 rounds a year. I broke it down. It's 80 hours a year a boxer hits the speed bag. If I had an extra 80 hours a year to train, shouldn't I develop a jab? Shouldn't I work on defense? So I took efficiency into boxing. I developed my entire own style of boxing. And after never making a sport, I tried out for every sport in school. I just wasn't athletic. But after learning the boxing scoring system, I became the number 1 boxer in the country within 2 years. No one was happy about my boxing style because as a heavyweight, we're supposed to be knocking people out, but I was just trying to score points. So I developed my style. Within 2 years, I qualified for the 2008 Olympic trials. I lost, but I had an epiphany. Everyone in the tournament who lost either quit or turned pro. If everyone quit or turned pro and I'm the only one left, aren't I the best? That it was an epiphany. And I realized so many times when we quit in life, we quit after we already gained experience.
Yeah.
Like if you failed the 5th grade and you had to take it over again, the second time would be so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you drop out after you fail the first time?
Right.
So I continued boxing. I ended up winning nationals in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 2012. So won nationals every year. Moved to Kansas City for boxing. This guy actually saw me win nationals in 2008 and said, "Hey, I want you to come to Kansas City to spar with this fighter." His fighter they called him Wyson, White Mike Tyson. I mean, 5'11" white dude, bald. He fought like Mike Tyson, and he was KMFO, knocking mother effers out.
Yeah.
And it was a setup. They would bring heavyweights into spar this Jeremiah guy. Jeremiah Graciano was his name. And he would knock everyone out in the first, second day of sparring. So the coach brought me out for 6 days and didn't tell me. And my thought process was, okay, I don't have any pride. I know how I fight. I'll just never let this guy hit me. So I'd run from him until he got tired, and then I'd do really well for myself. So because I lasted 6 days, no one else done that before, they asked me to come back. So I quit my job at Waffle House because I was working at Waffle House at the time. They wouldn't give me a month off. So I went to Kansas City for a month. I sparred him, and the owner of the boxing gym also owned Ringside, the boxing equipment company. And he allowed me to work in their warehouse, $10 an hour off the books.
Mm.
Bro, when I tell you I was rich,
Uh-huh.
I went from making $5.50 an hour at Waffle House to making $10 an hour off the books.
Yeah.
So after my month, I lost my job. I was living in Florida at the time, and he called me up. He says, "Hey, I heard you lost your job. If you ever want to come to Kansas City, I'll coach you." And I said, "Sure, I'll come right now." Because I had nothing. And so we worked out a deal. He said I can live in his house for a year for free.
Mm-hmm.
He'll give me a job, started me at $30K a year, but I had no bills. And he lets me take off for boxing. In exchange, though, because everything comes with something,
mm-hmm.
I have to go because he's an older white guy. His boxing gym's in the hood.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's in the hood, because he says that's where the kids are that need his help.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not relatable.
Mm-hmm.
So he asked for me to go around all the high schools and middle schools, talk about my experience with boxing, and get kids to join the nonprofit boxing gym.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go into schools, and literally I got to talk about bullying at schools. The reason why I got involved in boxing. And he asked me, what do I need to win? And I was like, the only reason why I've only won one national championship is I can't afford to get to the fights. He says, he said, if I can pay for you to get to the fights and send you with a coach, would you win? I said, I'll do you better. Send me to twice as many fights. Don't send me with a coach because you have to pay for the coach to travel and all that. I'll just go by myself. I already know how to win. So I started coaching myself. I traveled around the country, and at that point, I was just driving around my Prius. I would sleep in my Prius, train and fight anywhere. Anytime there was a heavyweight somewhere who had anything to say, I would just drive to his city and fight him in his hometown with no coach. My thought process was, let's say, Mike, let's say you had 100 boxing matches. We're same age, same weight. You have 100 boxing matches, and I have 3 boxing matches, and we fight. Who do you think is going to win?
You're the one that has more boxing matches because you have more likelihood to do it.
Yep.
It's not like you're lined 100%, your 100% line in your bio.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So what my process was, I just want to get as many fights as possible. I don't care about my record. Because if I have, after my 200th fight, the average boxer has like 40 fights. After my 200th fight, all these fights are pretty much easy and casual. So I won nationals in 2000 because he was paying for me to travel all these places. I didn't have to do anything but box. So I won nationals in 08, 9, 10, 11. 2012, I won the Olympic trials. Wasn't even close. I dominated. And then I became the first boxer in U.S. history to be suspended and kicked off the Olympic team for not filling out paperwork.
What? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, it never really worked like that. So USADA, the United States Drug Testing Agency, U.S., the Association of Drug, whatever administration, USADA, they drug test you randomly. And I left the country and I forgot to send an email saying I was leaving the country. And I left the country to go to Azerbaijan to fight in a tournament. I get drug tested to fight in, but they showed up to my home in Kansas City and I wasn't there. Missed drug test is a positive drug test. I was suspended for a positive drug test, even though I tested negative the same week in Azerbaijan. It seems like a weird occurrence. It has never happened before. It happens all the time. Athletes miss drug tests. I travel 300 days a year. It's never been an issue, but it was a few months after Lance Armstrong went on Oprah in 2012. Mm-hmm. And they cracked down and made an example out of athletes for no reason.
Right.
And so I'll take it back. My senior year of high school, my parents moved from New York to Florida. I had just started boxing. I had 4 boxing matches. I was starting to get confident. And when I moved to Florida, I realized no one knows me. I can be whoever I want. I can adopt an English accent and no one will know the difference. So I decided mentally, I took maybe about 5 or 6 people I thought were really cool in New York. I embodied their personalities and I would do the things they would do. I would say the things I would say. I just pretended to be them.
Yeah.
And no one in Florida knew a difference. Everyone believed me. I became popular. And my senior year in high school, my boxing gym was 6 miles away from my high school. And I just walked every day. I walked 6 miles to the gym. And it's not because my parents didn't have a car. They just didn't believe in my vision. They thought it was a waste of gas money. This is when like gas was like $4 a gallon. And they're like, no. So I believed in myself and I just would walk to the gym every day. Because I knew I didn't prove it yet, but I knew if I understood the scoring system, I'm going to be great. So I walked 3 hours to the gym every day after school, 5 days a week. And I didn't have, this is back when iPods were a thing and I couldn't afford one. Mm-hmm. I had a $30 MP3 player that hung around your neck from Walmart that required batteries. Mm-hmm. I couldn't afford batteries. So I just make up stories in my head to kill the time. And in these stories, I had all the girls, all the money, all the jewelry, all the cars. Everyone was afraid to fight me. I made up this fantasy in my mind for 15 hours a week. And I would do affirmations followed by actions. And bro, in just like 3 months, I became obnoxiously cocky. Like I believed in myself so much. And it reflected. Then a month before I graduated high school, I went back to New York to my old high school. Now, I didn't really care about graduating with the people I went to school with. I just wanted them to see how cool I became. Because I was confident for the first time. And I walked into that high school. And the second I stepped foot on that property, I regressed into that same unconfident, awkward person I always was. Mm-hmm. And I was so confused, man, because I was waiting to get there. And as soon as I graduated, I left and went back to Florida. And I just didn't go to New York for like 10 years. Because I realized I liked who I was in Florida. I didn't like who I was in New York. And I couldn't figure out what happened. Why couldn't I be that person? And then when I got kicked off the Olympic team, I went from this cocky person, arrogant, to reading comments online. And people were saying, I bet he's humble now. Mm. And I was trying to get back in shape because my year off, I gained about 50 pounds. I was depressed. I hated myself. And I realized I would work out for a few days and fall off and work out for a few days and fall off. And I was beating myself up and thought about what's the difference between me in 2006 walking to the gym and me in 2012. One of us liked me. Hmm. And I was like, okay, I need to get back to being my biggest fan, about patting myself on the back. And reading a comment, someone said, I bet he's humble now. And it stuck with me. Michael, do you have your phone on you?
I do.
Could you Google the definition of humble?
All right, let's do that.
This alone changed my life. Michael, do you have any kids?
I got 2 daughters.
Okay, let's go with the younger one. What's her name?
Alina.
Alina. Okay, when you read this first definition, I want you to keep Alina in mind.
I did Bumble by mistake. Is that Sublime?
That's a dating site.
I know it is. I think it's subconscious. Okay, so Humble. Okay, here we go. So Humble, let's see. It is indignity of importance. Similar, humiliate, abase, demean, belittle.
Do any of these definitions sound positive?
No.
So if you ever wonder why the word humiliate and humility sound like the same word, same Latin root word, which is lowly. Now, I say this with respect to everyone's religious beliefs and backgrounds, but the actual definition of humble is lowly. Now, imagine this. Let's say you're killing the podcasting role, right? And then you run into a podcaster who's not.
Yeah.
What do we normally do? We humble ourselves down to where they are so they don't feel bad. And I realized during my suspension, I was humbled. This is where you accomplish things. So if the best person in the room humbled themselves down to where everyone else is, who benefits?
Nobody. You're never going to rise because you're trying to gain connection rather than because it's lonelier, in rarefied air.
So what you could do is you can pull people up to where you are. So I decided I was going to throw humility out the window. I was going to be my biggest fan. And I went out and I legally changed my last name to Awesome because I genuinely believe I am.
Yes, I get
it. And it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. But here's what I realized about that. I used to be a hater back in the day. When life wasn't going good for me, when I was depressed, when I was eating shit, that's when I was a hater. And I've never hated on anyone doing worse than me. So I realized when I changed my last name to Awesome, it's going to rub some people the wrong way. But I can't stop believing in myself because other people don't believe in themselves. I'm willing to pull everyone up to where I am. So I changed my last name to Awesome. I actually lost a bet and had to be vegan for 28 days. And the diet entails sobriety, which meant that was the first time I was sober during my suspension. And I started to see clarity for the first time. And I realized I didn't want to be that negative person. So I started to change my internal dialogue. I only speak highly of myself. I don't say anything negative about me. I do stand-up comedy, but I refuse to do anything self-deprecating. Your internal dialogue is your fuel. If you can fail without being discouraged, success becomes inevitable. If you can fail without being discouraged, success becomes inevitable. How do we stop ourselves from being discouraged? And that's by talking positive to ourselves. Michael, you have 2 daughters, and you still think about yourself more than you think about them.
Yeah, self-preservation, probably, yeah.
Yeah, and even when you think about them, you think about them as their father.
Yes.
So it's still kind of about you.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say humility isn't thinking less about yourself. It's about thinking about yourself less. But Michael, you're a grown man in America. Who else is going to think about you if not you? And why is it so bad to think about yourself? So I had that internal dialogue switched to me. Now, to take this back, I've been boxing at this point for 5 years, 6 years in the story. I don't even like boxing. It was just, I joined the gym and I found out I was good at it. And I realized it could take me out of living in my parents' house.
Yeah.
And in 2008, when I won my first national championship, they give you a form to fill out: height, weight, age, reach. The last question was, what do you want out of boxing? Most people put Olympic medal, championship belt, millions of dollars. I put 2 things: to be a good role model and to have my own TV show. It was like 2008. Everyone was getting their own TV. Reality TV was blowing up. Everyone got their own show. But that was my goal. That's what I wanted out of boxing. I saw it as an avenue to get me to be a good role model, and a TV show. So I think of goals as a lighthouse. If you're a ship in the ocean, you see a lighthouse. You don't need to know much details. Just go towards it. That is your goal. As you get closer to the lighthouse, you might start to see colors, shades, windows. And the closer you get to the goal, the more you're going to realize that lighthouse didn't look like you thought it would when you first started your journey. So when I returned to boxing in 2013, I won nationals, reclaimed my spot as captain of the USA national boxing team, won nationals in 2013, 14, 15, 16. Netflix did a documentary on it called Counterpunch. It's still on there. And I won the Olympic trials in 2016. Spoiler alert, I don't die at the end. But then I lose in international competition. I don't get to go to Rio.
How old were you?
At this point, 27, 28.
Yeah, well, older than compared to the other guys.
Yeah.
Impressive.
And And I told myself, I was like, okay, I put all this into boxing. I wanted to be a performer. I wanted I wanted a TV show. Whereas I've been boxing for over 10 years and I'm not doing the thing I actually wanted to do. Even though boxing was fun, I got to travel over 30 countries representing the US as captain of the national team. It was a great experience, but I was like, that's not what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to be a good role model and I wanted to be a performer. Granted, my goal, the lighthouse started to look different because no one wants a TV show anymore. Like, that's not relevant. Well, being a social media influencer was more relevant. So basically, my lighthouse started to change as I was getting towards my goal. And I decided I wanted to be a youth speaker because going to all those schools and speaking to students about bullying and how to live life was, even though boxing was fun, to me, that was so much more fulfilling. So I decided in 2016, I lost on Thursday in Argentina, flew back to US on Sunday. And by Tuesday, I was at the National Speakers Association pursuing a new career in speaking. I realized I wanted to speak in schools. There's not a lot of money in that. So someone made a joke and was like, you're a motivational speaker. You're going to speak in a van down by the river. And it's a Saturday Night Live Chris Farley sketch, right, where he's a motivational speaker who lived in a van down by the river and ate government cheese. Right. I bought a van. I funny enough, I had totaled my Prius and I used my insurance money. I bought a van without air conditioning. It was a Dodge Sprinter. And I lived in my van for 3 years because it allowed me to travel around the country and speak at schools without the cost of flights, hotels, or rentals. So I had no overhead and it allowed me to speak enough. Because again, if you have 100 boxing matches and I have 3, you're going to win because experience trumps it all. Mm-hmm. I'm going to speak more than any other speaker and I'm going to be the best speaker. That was my goal. So I spoke at 200 schools a year through 2017 to 2020. And then the pandemic happened. And since I could no longer sleep at Walmart parking lots and shower at Planet Fitness because everything closed down, I bought a house. Because you can save money when your mortgage is your car insurance. Mm-hmm. But actually before the pandemic happened, I realized 2020 Olympics was around the corner and I'm talking about being a boxer, but I'm not actually doing it. So I decided to sign up for Team USA and they said, I can't because I have a speaking business, it's an amateur sport. I have to dissolve my LLC. And I wasn't willing to do that. Mm-hmm. My dad's from Trinidad. I flew to my dad's home country. I learned about his country, learned about his culture, filed for citizenship, became a dual citizen, fought in the Olympic trials, won by knockout, returned to the US, living in the van, speaking at high schools and middle schools, and finally qualified for the 2020 games.
Wow.
And then the pandemic happened and I didn't get to go. So to wrap that up, 2008, qualified for the Olympic trials, lost. 2012, won the Olympic trials, got suspended. 2016, won the Olympic trials, lost in international competition. 2020, won the Olympic trials, pandemic happened, Trinidad didn't send a team. So if you look at my story, if you look at my story as trying to make the Olympics, because that was kind of the goal, was to make the Olympics, you can consider my career a failure. But if you look at the journey, I retired with over 400 boxing matches, and I retired as the most decorated boxer in U.S. history. Focus on the lighthouse. Focus on the journey to the lighthouse. And now I've retired. I've transitioned into a career where I make a handsome salary, traveling around, doing words. Yeah. It's the same traveling I did with boxing, but I don't have to check my weight and no one hits me.
Wow. So much to unpack here. First of all, what a great job. What a great speaker you are. And I mean, Savani, you're talking in the beginning. It's like, tell me about your, who you've interviewed, what's your best interview. This is one of the best encapsulating storytellers I've ever had on the show. So
thank you, brother.
Yeah, oh my God. What real quick, are you writing a screenplay? You should write
No.
Okay,
No.
You seem like the kind of guy that could do anything, puts his mind to it. Just learn.
I think we all can. I think I'm awesome. I don't think I'm special.
No, but you have put in the reps and conditioned yourself to be a chapter ahead, to learn other things. So you should write a screenplay about your story.
I've never considered that.
I rarely ever say that, but there was a documentary about a part of your life. It would be nice to see this story. There's a lot of structure there. That's just something I throw out there. So where are you at today? What does your day-to-day look like? I'm just so curious because this journey, you explain it so well. By the way, real quick, I had to sleep with my grandmother in the same room off and on until I was 9 years old. My dad was a Rolling Stone. He was never around. I would just look out the window, and he'd say, "I'll be home at 8." Wouldn't show up until April. I would always be in the car with him going to. He sold tool business. So you'd go to the people that imported the tools, and he'd sell the tools, and I'd go with my dad everywhere, and to his place of work. I see a lot of parallels. I never went to college. I just didn't really. I just wanted to be a business. Person right away. I just see so many. I was shaking my head. I'm like,
I slept in bed with my grandma till I was 10.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Luckily, I had a separate bed.
They bought us. My grandma bought a separate bed, but I don't like sleeping alone. So it came to one point where we'd both be sleeping in the we call it the king bed, the big bed, and then when I fall asleep, she'd get up and go sleep on the small children's twin bed.
Right.
I was such a grandma's boy.
Yeah. There's other things as well, but I mean, my alarm clock was an old Jewish lady hocking up in the morning. But I think you also, it's so weird because you have so much to your story. We didn't talk. You said you did stand up, and I was like, look at your bio, and I must have skimmed over it, because that's why you were on the Stein Time show. Because initially he was supposed to be scheduled on the Stein Time show, which is I have more comedians and actors, and but I looked at your bio. I was like, no, you can be long shot leaders. But I did, I've done stand up off and on since I was 19, and now real quick, let's talk about stand up. Where have you done stand up?
All over. When I was living in the van, so I realized I know how systems work. So comedy clubs, I interviewed comedy club owners. What do you look for? And I realized they don't care how funny you are. They care how many tickets you can sell. Mm-hmm. I am not the greatest comic, but I am a novelty, which means I may not be famous, but I'm boxing famous, which means in every city there are boxing people who will come out, not maybe to watch me do well, but at least watch a potential shit show. So I was able to sell tickets in every city I went to. So in 2016 at the Olympic trials, I fought in this, I believe it's Silver City Casino in Reno, Nevada.
Yeah.
There's a Laugh Factory in the same casino.
Yeah.
I performed, I believe, 8 shows that week, the same week. So I would fight in the Olympic trials, shower, and go perform every night.
Wow.
Because I wanted my opponent to know he wasn't that good.
Wow.
Whoever I was fighting, I was more worried about my stand-up routine than my fight. That's how prepared I was.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah. 2012, when I couldn't box for a year, I was like, okay, I wanted to be a performer. I didn't even want to box, and I got boxing taken away from me, and I haven't done any performing. I'm talking about following your goals, chasing your dreams. I'm doing this boxing stuff. I'm not doing what I want. Yeah. So I started going to open mics in 2012. I learned the system, and as I traveled around the country fighting, I would reach out to schools to speak and then comedy clubs to perform.
Wow. You're a problem solver. That's what you do.
Which is a problem in relationships because they don't want problems solved.
That's true. They want to be heard. Yes.
I don't hear people. I hear problems and I give solutions.
Right. Fantastic. So where are you we went over, but I had to it's such a great, amazing story. Where are you at in your life and your career right now? What's happening with your life and your career?
So right now I'm no longer living in the van. I still own the van because I have a fear that I'm going to lose everything and end up homeless again. So that's a little bit of my comfort is my van. And I'm working on, I'm in the speaking world now. And I thought to be a great speaker, you just had to speak well. So the reason why I lived in the van is I was learning to craft my story. I was learning where to pause when you're speaking. I'm learning the subtle nuances of speaking. But then I learned the speaking business has nothing to do with speaking. It has to do with business. It has to do with marketing. It has to do with follow-ups. It has to do with emails. It has to do with videos. So I'm learning all of that. So I take business classes. I'm infatuated with entrepreneurism. I think I think most people do themselves a disjustice going to school. If there's anything I can do, if there's anything I could change about my story, I would go back and drop out of high school just to show you can make it this far without a conventional education. Because I see school is just a way to teach you to be busy for 8 hours doing 2 hours of work.
Mm.
And I see so many adults, employees, Forbes released an article said the average 8-hour workday, there's only like 68 minutes of productivity.
Right.
So I'm big on efficiency. I work in Frisco Library. I go from 11 to 12, work on the side. Then you can rent a room for up to 2 hours. I rent a room from 12 to 2. I work 3 hours a day. My phone's on Do Not Disturb. As of right now, it's always on Do Not Disturb. And I do 3 hours of focused work, and I get more done than the average human being. Yeah. And from there, I work on different companies. Like I just started a seat cover company called No Sweat Seats. So when you're done working out, instead of changing clothes, you put this piece of fabric that fits perfectly over your seat cover. You can find them on seatcovers.com, nosweatseats.com. And so you basically cut your laundry in half. I also was very into sustainability. I'm still vegan. And I started a telescopic reusable straw company as well. And I realized that's pretty pointless. I think we should put the onus on Coca-Cola and Pepsi to be recycling their own fucking cans instead of putting it on the people who do it, because they're making millions of dollars, billions. But I'm just looking for different avenues of entrepreneurship right now. And I love learning. I love business. And the greatest thing I could have ever done was boxing, because it's difficult. And once you do difficult things, everything in life becomes easier. Put your kids in difficult sports.
Yes. Well, God, so many unique things. The fun little thing is, what a fun little great idea to have that seat cover, because somebody that works out in the gym, I used to, they don't own gym, but I used to, get out of like Gold's Gym and you sweat, and then you're like, your seat's all, sweaty and it's nasty. And then what do you do? This thing just folds right, just comes right off, and then you put it in the wash. And
Yep.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea.
Just throwing it in the chat box. You can see it's on Amazon as well.
Cool. That's your business?
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. I'm just trying to start a bunch of business. I love
No Sweat Seats. Where do you get this thing made? Do you make it? You get your?
I get it made out in China.
Yeah, and you do it and you ship it out. Ship it in.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. I love that idea. I love the name. No Sweat Seats. It's perfect.
Yeah, we got you covered.
I'm in the tarp business. I've done the tarp business since 2000, and people kind of say that's a good slogan. I'm like, I hate that slogan. But yours is okay. I No Sweat Seats. It's awesome. I wish I was working out going to gyms. I just think that's such a cool little niche idea. Long term, let's go, 5, 10, 15 years. I can't wait to hear what this is going to be. What's your long-term plan?
So in 2012, when I started doing stand-up comedy, I was still speaking at those schools for the coach. And I would always do that. I'm still doing it, but I was doing it a lot back then. And I would take over the gym class for the entire day. And that way I get to connect with every single student in the school in a day. And I hated going to open mics because you wait till like 9 o'clock at night to go. You obviously know, it's just comics. No one's listening to you. If there's someone on a first date,
you can't get a read on your material. You don't know what's working, what's not. Yeah.
So I started spending the last 5 minutes of all my speeches doing stand-up. I would try my open mic jokes, and I realized students loved the last 5 minutes more than the entire speech.
Right.
So basically what I do now is I do an hour stand-up comedy show. And I do corporate in schools as well, but it's an hour comedy show. All the jokes have morals and messages attached to it. And what I want to do is I want to create a genre called motivational humor.
Oh, God.
It's not a genre yet, but once I make it a genre, I'm going to be the daddy of that bitch.
Yes, you are. Wow. Good for you, man. This is a fucking great story. I love this story. Great job. I mean, you are... Just keep on doing what you're doing, man. Just, more people. I'm glad you're on the podcast today. Cam F. Awesome. He is, Mike, I was like saying, this guy's awesome. And even if he turns out to be good, don't say it, Mike. You know what I'm going to say?
Say it. It's the best word ever.
He's awesome, guys. I mean, listen to this guy talk. You're really good, Cam. I'm telling you, I really appreciate what you just dished out today. It was, you're smart, you're clever. What a great story. You've gone up and down and up and down. You and I have like several parallels to each other. I like this guy.
I like you too, man. I like you too.
Oh my God. Tell everybody how they can find out more about you.
Craigslist misconnections. No, I'm joking.
Flashback.
You can follow my OnlyFans. No, you can follow me at CamFAwesome everywhere on social media. CamFAwesome.com. So as well as doing motivational speaking, I was captain of Team USA for almost 15 years. And as captain, my job was to find the do's and don'ts of each country. Like you go to Azerbaijan, you got to find out some things first. And then I would learn these facts and relay the message to my team so we don't look like idiots and we're good ambassadors for a sport in other countries. Through doing that for almost a decade and a half, I learned a lot about cultural communication. So now I also, as a diversity consultant, speak about cultural communication within the workplace. And I also lead professional development workshops for educators, helping them communicate with students of different backgrounds and cultures.
Cam, thank you so much for sharing. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thanks for joining us. Gear up for your next adventure and head over to bolotour.com to check out the amazing Bolo Pack and their other innovative outdoor gear. Catch you next time.